Good morning. My name is Alejandro Lopez Macro, and today I'll be presenting my personal project, creating an environmentally friendly electromagnetic train. My goal and inquiry question. My goal is to make a prototype of an electromagnetic train that will be clean for the environment and powered by a sustainable source of energy. My idea went through a lot of changes, but it was an exciting and challenging process that I'm proud of. My inquiry question was, to what extent the creation of an environmentally friendly clean transport can help combat the problem of climate change? During my process of the project, I was able to answer this question. My global context. My global context was globalization and sustainability. I chose this global context for the reason that my project is based on the idea to make an environmentally clean way of transportation, powered by a sustainable power source and hopefully be used around the world. During my process of investigation in my project, I found a lot of interesting and important information that will later on help me to make my prototypes. For example, electromagnets are used on a lot of people's work because they're magnets that can be controlled, meaning they can be turned off and turned on by regulating the electricity. Contrary to a wall magnet that always has a constant magnetic wave. My sources also made me understand that the electromagnet's power comes from how much cable is coiled around it, meaning the amount of coil that's around a metal surface uh, produces more magnetic power. Lastly, I found out that cobalt absorbs electromagnetic waves. I found out this fact when come with a solution to a problem. In a train, people will be using electronics and electromagnetic waves damage these said electronics. But using a cobalt interior sheet would prevent these electromagnetic waves to damage these electronics. The process of my product. During my creation stage, I went through a lot of changes and steps. For example, my first step was to make a sketch. In my sketch, you can see how I detailed some important facts. For example, I show the power source that will later become a regulator of electricity. Then I showed the prototype of the train that was a small piece of metal capable of passing through the tube. And lastly, how long was gonna be my prototype. And as you can see, I showed how I was gonna use copper coil to make the outside and produce electromagnetic waves. The process of my product. When creating my first prototype, I used a electric motor from a fridge so I can keep up the characteristic of my project of being friendly to the environment. Instead of throwing this damaged motor to the trash, I used the copper cable it had inside it to transfer it to my project. My first prototype. My first prototype didn't work for the reason that the coil I made wasn't thick enough. So not enough power was being produced. So a magnet wave would push the train. My final product. As you can see in my final product, the coil is way thicker, and this made the electromagnetic wave larger and more powerful, so that a piece of metal was able to go through my IB learner profile. During my project, I developed a lot of IB skills, and this would help me a lot in the future because they're really useful and important skills. For example, I think the most important were being a risk taker. I think this skill is really important to me because I was never very confident of my ideas, so I commonly went for the safer route and not take any risk. But thanks to this project, I was able to choose a topic I was really interested in and take the risk of making this product and maybe failing doing it. But for thankfully, my product did work. Secondly, I think that the communicator IB learner skill was also really important for the reason that um, communicating has always been difficult for me because I find it hard to communicate with people I'm not close to. But thanks to this, I was able to talk to people to ask questions for my project, and I was able to learn a lot from professionals, which I'm really thankful for. Um, and the third, I think it was the most important, was principle. I've never been very responsible when making projects or work, but this project really taught me to be responsible and finish my stuff early, so I don't have to be rushing to finish it at at the last moment. My ATL skills card. These skills are really useful for me. I'm sure I could practice these skills in the future and work. Well, these skills include, but are not limited to, time management. Time management was really useful. This project was very challenging and regarding project, and time management was really important because there was a lot of stuff to complete in time. Setting realistic goals. Setting realistic goals was always a trouble for me because I always aimed to make something really, really hard, but often never finished. Thanks to this skill, I learned to measure my capabilities and make a possible project. Practice strategies to reduce stress and anxiety. This was a really, really good skill I learned because it helped me stay focused on the project and not get distracted by anxiety or stress, and instead practice stuff like exercising regularly to reduce this anxiety and stress and make my project better. And lastly, identify secondary and primary sources. I think this was a really important um, skill I learned more for my future because when identifying primary and secondary sources, you can with primary sources you know that those are more realistic because they come from a person that experienced said topic. And secondary can be less, I think, less trusted because they come from passed down or from a written article. Thank you for your attention.